Join me on what I eat in a day while on a GLP-1 weight loss medication. Hi everyone, and welcome back to Clean Eating Kitchen. I'm Carrie, and this is my channel where I share easy, healthy recipes and tips. And I have a master's degree in public health, and I also am a certified holistic nutritionist. And all that is to say, I never thought I would be saying those words. Join me while on a GLP-1. I, maybe like many other people, had some preconceived notions about what this weight loss drug was about and who it was for. And then really about 6 weeks ago, I heard a podcast where it was discussing about how GLP-1s could be really appropriate for women in perimenopause who have kind of unexpectedly gained tummy weight specifically, and also for people who have autoimmune disease. There's some emerging research that is showing that these GLP-1s can help calm chronic inflammation. So I wanted to talk about it because I wanted to help break some barriers about, I don't know, about any concerns or maybe even some shame around starting a weight loss medication, and hope that I can maybe bring some clarity and maybe just some education around it. So I am going to be sharing a day's worth of what I eat in a day, and that would be high protein, high fiber, nutrient dense. And I would say that I've kind of already been doing those things, but once you do start on a GLP-1, if you have not been focusing on your protein or your fiber or your hydration for that matter, you're really going to want to do that because your appetite changes so much. And specifically, it really almost goes away. I would say it goes down by anywhere from 25 to 75%. So in that way, you really need to focus on what you're eating. And if you're really more interested in learning specifically my thoughts around what to eat on a GLP-1, you might want to check out a video I did just last week. So it's recently on my videos, and it's how to eat clean on a GLP-1. Today, I'm going to be focusing on what I eat, but of course, what I eat is not necessarily specific to what you would eat. And just to also say, I do eat gluten-free and dairy-free, and that's because I have a history of autoimmune disease, and I will react to those foods if I consume them. So let's go ahead and jump into this day's worth of eating, and then I'll talk a little bit more about my GLP-1 journey so far, which has only been about 3 weeks. So I always start my morning with a green smoothie. I have done that for probably about 15 years now, and I just find it's a really great way to get in those green leafy veggies, which I don't love to eat on their own or sauteed or anything like that. And so I find putting them in a smoothie just works really well. I add some sweetness like from molasses, I add frozen cherries, I add cocoa powder, I add protein powder. And so it ends up being blended into, I think, a really tasty concoction. And I usually make one for my husband as well. And then I would say I get about 25 grams of protein in my smoothie. And then the way it's changed from being on a GLP-1 is because my appetite is probably about 25 to 50% diminished almost at all times. It's really fascinating. I have just cut back on the volume of my smoothie. And then I also found right after I started the GLP-1 that coffee, I don't know, my taste buds changed a little tiny bit, not so much. I mean, not like hugely, but the coffee just wasn't really sitting well because there can be some nausea when you take a GLP-1. And by the way, it is an injection and it is by prescription only. So just to put that out there. And then if you're also curious, there are brand names of GLP-1s, and they're like Ozempic, Mounjaro, Zepbound, Semiglutide, and Wegovy. And then I'm taking a compounded version called tirzepatide, and I am taking it at a microdose. And I also wanted to say that I listened to a podcast about a month ago, and that's where I really got educated about the use of GLP-1s, not just for obesity and type 2 diabetes, which is what they're originally created for, but for perimenopausal women like me who unexpectedly gained like 10 to 15% of my body weight just very quickly without changing anything. And I think that's due likely to fluctuating hormones during this phase of my life. And then I've experienced a lot of weight loss resistance. So I tried doing all the things. I tried exercising after meals. I tried cutting back on my meals, tried cutting back on my, fat intake, like change around my macronutrients a little bit, and nothing worked. And that is over a period of, I would say, about 2 years that I really was focusing on things. And really, I just saw the scale continue to increase. And this is also not to say that I don't believe in the body positivity movement, because I really do believe in that movement. I believe in health at all sizes, but I personally saw my lab values also start to get a little wonky. Like my fasting insulin started to get out of range, out of a functional medicine range. And I could feel that because I would get hungry after meals. Even if I had a balanced meal, I would get starving like an hour later or in the middle of the night. And then that led me to eating when I really didn't want to eat, but I had to put something in my stomach, because you can't sleep when your stomach is growling. So I will say one change I have made with my breakfast is I now will have tea or sometimes a coffee alternative, but I will add a scoop of collagen protein, which dissolves right in. I'll put a link in the description of the one that I like. There's one at Costco you can get that's very reasonably priced, or you can order it. And that adds about anywhere from 15 to 20 more grams of protein, or I would say 11 to 15 grams, depending on how many scoops you use. So I try to get my breakfast with about 35 grams of protein. So let's move on to lunch. And I didn't have a huge appetite for lunch. Actually, I should say I did exercise after breakfast, and that is something that's really important, is to focus on strength training while you're on a GLP-1, because you don't want to lose your muscle mass. And I think it's inevitable that you're going to lose a few pounds of muscle mass, but you really want to fight your hardest to prevent that. And so strength training is really important, as well as doing cardiovascular exercises like walking or dancing, whatever you can do to keep moving. And then specifically adding in strength training to try to preserve and maybe even build that muscle mass while you're losing weight. And that's always important, right? But it's just that much more important while you're on a GLP-1. So for whatever reason, I wasn't starving by lunchtime. So I had kind of a light lunch, but I wanted to keep it nutrient dense, protein, and fiber. So I ended up having a gluten-free buckwheat sourdough piece of toast with some avocados, some cherry tomatoes that I grew myself. Can you believe it's still winter time and I'm still growing my cherry tomatoes that I grew from last year. So that's just fun for me. I also had some cucumber just to add more, I don't know, hydration and some more like bulk to my stomach. And then I ended up having that with some green tea and some chocolate as dessert. Now, previously, it would have been very hard for me to limit my chocolate intake. That's kind of like my kryptonite is sweets, and specifically chocolate. But now being on this GLP-1, I can easily kind of moderate my intake to a more reasonable level. And I just recently saw an interview with Oprah, or it was a quote, and she talked about how she never realized, because she's lost quite a bit of weight on a GLP-1 and she looks terrific. I mean, I always think she looks terrific, but she talked about now she can like climb this mountain that she lives on in Hawaii. I thought that was really exciting. And she said also she realized that for her whole life, she was trying to use willpower, moderate her food intake, when she didn't realize like something was off in her body. And so now she can feel like what it feels like to eat until you're almost full. And I totally identified with that, because when my hormones were like all wonky, I didn't ever feel full, or if I did, it was just a very temporary filling, and then I would need more food. It was so frustrating. So I mentioned this in my video about clean eating on a GLP-1 is previously we always heard the advice of like, don't snack between meals. But I think when you are on a GLP-1, sometimes it's easier to eat smaller meals and then have a snack. And then I think try to use that snack time like wisely. So try to get some more protein. So on most days I'll have like a mug of bone broth, which that will get me another additional like 10 grams of protein. But yesterday when I was recording my food, I wasn't really hungry for snacks. So I just had some leftover beet juice that I had made a few days prior, and it really hit the spot. It kind of like got my blood sugar going again, and just gave me like a little boost of energy. as I went into dinner time. So after lunch, I did another walk, and I am trying to do that. I'm trying to be really mindful of my insulin and my blood sugar. So trying to do a little activity after breakfast and after lunch to try to make sure that my blood sugar stays stable. So I did that. And then I also wanted to mention I went out and did some errands during the day, went to a farm stand, got some more produce, went to the library, just did a few things. And so a lot of people complain about having fatigue on a GLP-1. I have not experienced that. The biggest symptoms I've had so far is nausea, headache. I had a little bit of like abdominal pain, which is a side effect. I have not had anything serious. Of course, if you have anything serious, you need to talk to your healthcare provider pretty quickly. But thankfully, I haven't had that. And it could be also because I'm starting at a very low dose, as I mentioned. And I have had some success so far. I've taken 3 shots so far. So I started in mid-February, and I have reached some weight loss goals already. I'm not going to get into the specifics because I don't want to like trigger people and make you feel like, I don't know, like my goal should be your goal kind of thing. But it's pretty mind-blowing when you've been trying everything for 2 years and then you try this and you get success. I mean, you tried everything for 2 years and nothing happened, and then you try this and it's working. So we'll say it does work. So it's very encouraging. It's very motivating. I've had some questions from people like, is it going to mess up your metabolism? What happens when you go off the medication? So I think some of that is going to be very individually dependent. So I don't know what's going to happen for me. I don't know if I will need to go to like an every other week injection or maybe take a few months off and then start again. I just don't really know because I'm so much at the beginning of my journey. So stay tuned. And if you want to learn more, let me know. Otherwise, I'll cover other topics instead. Did think it was interesting to talk about. And it's been pretty huge for me in my life. Also, I've gotten questions, or I've seen a lot of comments online about how much does it cost. So it can be very expensive, and it would have been a problem if I had to pay for the brand version. I am paying for a compounded version, and so it's quite affordable, like less than $100 a month for me right now. So for dinner, I also wanted to focus on same things, high protein, high fiber, nutrient dense. So I ended up just cooking up like some ground meat. I didn't really for some reason I ran out of onions and some vegetables I would normally use. So I just ended up chopping up a big bunch of cilantro and putting that in just because I thought it would add some green. And then I served that with some air fried frozen vegetables and a baked potato. And one thing my doctor mentioned, he said you might actually need to increase your carb intake because that will help keep your blood sugar stable. And that is because the GLP-1s do change the way your body uses insulin. So you can get low blood sugar easier. So you just need to be mindful of that. And I think that's where like having more snacks can be helpful, and just being careful, not to have like too much sugar, but yet you also want to maintain your blood sugar. So you need to make sure you're staying nourished. So, I mean, it's so crazy. In the past, I never ever would have said like, I forgot to eat. That would never happen to me because I would be so hungry. But I wouldn't say I forget to eat now, but my appetite is just so much more diminished. And a lot of people call that food noise. Like that's the term for like always thinking about food. And I would say like that's been a huge positive effect for me, is reduced food noise. I just am not always like thinking about my next meal. If I think about food, it doesn't mean that I need to run to the pantry and have a snack. It just doesn't like trigger my brain in the same way. It's very interesting. I also have a lot more empathy for people who've struggled with their weight and have had the really extreme weight loss resistance, which is just so frustrating. But after dinner, I did have a sweet treat. I just had some dairy-free yogurt with a little granola, some dairy-free milk, a little fiber supplement to help, because the GLP-1 does slow the food movement through your system. So having a little extra fiber can help. I added some frozen raspberries, which are really high in fiber. And then I didn't show this, but right before bed, I did have a little snack of like a chia pudding, and that just helped like add some more food into my tummy, and I was able to get through the night without getting hungry, which is a huge win for me. And I don't know, it just, I felt very nourished and I didn't wake up starving, and so I felt really satisfied from that day of eating. So I hope you like this video. I will link to that clean eating on a GLP-1 video that I mentioned. I'm going to put some links in the description because I started a private Facebook group for those of us who want to share I don't know, recipes and get support while on a GLP-1. I will put that in the description box. And other than that, just please let me know if you like this video, if you want to see more, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, everyone.